In the last 90 minutes, we've witnessed a political bombshell in the making. Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, vice chairwoman of the January 6th Select Committee and the most public-facing member of arguably the most conservative Republican dynasty in America, who earlier this week endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, has gone even further, this time saying that she and her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, will do something that, if you're even casually a follower of American politics, might think would mean hell has frozen over. Dick Cheney is voting for the Democratic nominee for president. Dick Cheney is voting for Vice President Kamala Harris. Here she is in conversation with The Atlantic's Mark Leibovich, making this news a short time ago in Austin, Texas.
Dick Cheney, your father, a beloved figure among Democrats for many, many years. Do you... if you know who he will be supporting or who he'll be voting for, do you care to share with us who he might be voting for?
Dick Cheney will be voting for Kamala Harris.
Okay. Wow. Words I never expected to hear.
Yeah. You know, if you think about the moment that we're in, and you think about how serious this moment is. You know, my dad believes, and he's said publicly, that there's never been an individual in our country who is as grave a threat to our democracy as Donald Trump is, and that's the moment that we're facing.
I'm going to show you all the news that Liz Cheney made because there's a lot more. But I want to stop here. I worked for Dick and Liz Cheney, and what Dick Cheney just did and what Liz just announced is he made it impossible. Made it impossible for the Rob Portmans and the Chris Christies and the George W. Bushes and the Bill Barrs to sustain their position that somehow, in some universe, Kamala Harris is worse than Donald Trump or writing someone in or doing nothing. But Liz Cheney, the Cheneys went further. Liz Cheney is also endorsing the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate in Texas, Congressman Colin Allred, over Republican Ted Cruz. Allred will join our program in a little bit to react to this endorsement. It's where we start today with some of our favorite friends. Former RNC spokesman, host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller's here with us. Also joining us, Democratic pollster to tell us what the Democrats do with all of this. Cornell Belcher's here with me at the table, the president of the National Action Network, the host of Politics Nation right here on MSNBC. The Reverend Al Sharpton's here, and former top prosecutor at the Department of Justice, Andrew Weissman's back with us. Lucky for us, all of them MSNBC contributors. Tim Miller, your thoughts?
Well, Nicole, I mean, in some ways, obviously, this is a shock. It's an earthquake. Dick Cheney, Darth Vader, voting for the Democrat should be a wake-up call to everybody. In other ways, it's not that much of a surprise because of what we've seen from Liz Cheney and just the backbone from the Cheneys. I want to go back to Dick cut an ad for her in her primary that she lost to a MAGA Republican when she was sacrificed at the altar of Donald Trump's insurrection by the Republican Party. And in that ad, he said, in our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual that was a greater threat to the Republic than Donald Trump. There's nothing more important that Liz will ever do than lead the effort to make sure Donald Trump is never again near the Oval Office, and she will succeed. I mean, that's as straightforward as it gets. That is classic Dick Cheney. If love him or hate him, he always was clear-eyed about what he thought was the right approach. And in this case, Dick Cheney is looking at this and seeing Donald Trump as the greatest threat in the history of the Republic. I mean, that is not mincing words. So I agree with everything you said in the intro. I think this is huge news. It also means we should mention that now the last two Republican VPs will not be voting for Trump. Mike Pence is neutral, I guess. And Dick Cheney is, so Donald Trump's own VP is not voting for him. And then the previous Republican VP is voting against him. I think that's pretty telling. And then I think it's worth sitting with something you said in the intro there. Condoleezza Rice, just to pick one example, was on Fox News earlier this week trying to do this two-step where she said, there are four horsemen of the apocalypse coming: isolationism, protectionism, nativism, and populism, and we need to fight against them. and she's on Fox, but she doesn't say Trump's name like he's Voldemort or something. And it's like, well, who are you talking about with those 4 threats? You know, if you think things are perilous, which was her words, and you think things those 4 threats are causing peril to the republic, and your colleague in the Bush cabinet thinks that one of the candidates is the greatest threat to our republic, well, then what is the obvious next step? And it's very refreshing that Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney have made the obvious next step, and I hope some other colleagues of theirs follow in their footsteps.
Well, I mean, not to talk out of school, but the construct is George W. Bush's. He writes about it in Decision Points, and he's privately, since before he left the presidency, worried about those threats. But the horses aren't headless, you know. I mean, the head on all 4 horses, Tim, is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is galloping through not just the Republican Party, but the world, cozied up to Viktor Orban, Vladimir Putin, and Kim Jong-un. And I think the question for all of them, wherever they go, is what's the difference between how you see the world and how Dick and Liz Cheney see the world? There is no, I attest, there is no ideological difference between Condoleezza Rice's worldview as it pertains to Vladimir Putin and Viktor Orban and Dick and Liz Cheney's. So the difference is, the variable is somewhere else, right?
Yeah. The variable is the courage to speak honestly, right? And to deal with the blowback that the Cheneys have dealt with and others have dealt with. Deal with the fact that Liz Cheney lost her seat, lost her spot in leadership. Deal with the fact that you don't get invited onto Brett Baer's show, I guess, if you say the words that it's Donald Trump who is the one that is the threat at the head of all these horses. And I should say one other thing. You know, I guess one rationale that some of those folks might have given to say why they're different than Dick and Liz in the past was that Trump would have people that were more aligned with them around him. But the other big news story this week is we've learned again, it's been confirmed again, that actually Trump has the most isolationist and the most dangerous people around him now this time. I mean, he chose J.D. Vance to be his VP at the advice of Tucker Carlson. Among a couple of other isolationists, Tucker, who was platforming a neo-Nazi, a historian, supposed historian that says that Churchill is the bad guy in World War II, and we know that J.D. Vance has been out there saying he doesn't care about the Ukrainians, he doesn't care about them. So like that is going to be his inner circle next time. A bunch of people that are anathema in their view of the free world and America's role in the world, anathema to the view of internationalists and the kind of bipartisan national security consensus since World War II. So we know now that there will not be other people around him that are more amenable to the Condi Rices of the world. So what is it? So now we know what the choice is. It's Kamala Harris, who's in line with the bipartisan national security consensus. You might disagree with some policy specifics, or it's Donald Trump, who is a threat to it and a threat to our republic, as Dick Cheney said.
I don't want to beat a dead horse. Well, so many horse. I didn't mean to make another horse reference, but what you just said is so vital. Dick Cheney's foreign policy views are what alienated him from all of the Democratic Party and large swaths of the Republican Party. It's what ushered in Donald Trump. And that Dick Cheney sees the world and sees America's enemies like Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un and Hamas and the threat of terrorism and the economic threats from China and whatnot, more like Kamala Harris does than anything that Donald Trump will do prospectively, is a political and ideological earthquake that is being felt and being reported out all around the world. Cornell Belcher, I have never covered a Republican making the move into the pro-democracy coalition without giving credit to the Democratic Party and the Democratic pro-democracy coalition for having all of us. What do they do with Dick Cheney?
Look, Nicole, I am completely gobsmacked because I got to tell you, many, many years ago, I would have never in a million years thought I'd be sitting here one day talking about Dick Cheney and the Cheneys endorsing a Democratic nominee. That's how incredibly our world has changed over the last couple of years as with the rise of Donald Trump. Look, I don't have to tell you this, but I think I want to sort of lean into with our viewers what a big freaking deal this is. There's probably not there's very few more iconic conservative names over the last 2 decades than the Cheneys, right? You know, and Lord knows we could disagree, and certainly disagree with Dick Cheney on a lot of policy and policy issues, but we don't think of him as someone who's not patriotic and loves this country and fights for democracy and what he believes about America, right? So he was a vice president, a Republican vice president, and their family is now leaning into support for a Democrat. That is an incredible moment in history, because we've not seen the likes of this in our modern history. And I've grown cynical. I think we've actually talked about this on the show before. I've grown cynical about how much endorsements matter or move people. I think in the last 2 decades, just in my mind, I think there's a couple endorsements that moved the ball that were impactful, and it was actually one of them was another Republican, because it was a Secretary, the late great Colin Powell, who endorsed Barack Obama. I thought that was an impactful and meaningful endorsement. And then primaries, when Senator Ted Kennedy endorsed Obama, I think it was a needle moving moment for again Obama. I think this is a needle moving moment, I think, for Vice President Harris, because there's, as you know, there's a lot of Republicans been sitting out on the fence, and we've been talking about permission structure. Yeah. Nicole, what bigger permission structure for conservatives to lean in and vote for the pro-democratic movement than Liz and Dick Cheney offering up the sort of permission structure and the proof points for it. I think it's huge. If I were the campaign, I would literally be running television ads with the Cheneys and talking about bipartisanship and talking about something bigger than left versus right, but something bigger about America.